economist Michael Amoah. He joins us from London, where he's a visiting senior fellow at the London School of Economics. Thanks so much for speaking to us on this news hour. Now, when it comes to corruption in Africa, what are some of the key factors that lead to so many countries experiencing high corruption?
The reason why corruption has been going on for a long time unchecked with impunity is actually because the institutions are not strong enough to actually address the issue. So politicians, particularly presidents, the state capture and the political elite corrupts and get away with it, and it goes unchecked. And really, what also happens is that the masses are not able to revolt against it, because then they're going to face the law, or they're actually going to face the security forces. And the middle class, which should really bring the politicians in check through officialdom, are also reluctant to do it and don't actually want to perhaps maybe go through a cultural revolution. And the judicial service that is supposed to prosecute are also sometimes bought by the elites. So the whole environment is such that corruption can basically just go on with impunity. And that's the situation, the reason why the youth have become fed up and are looking for opportunities elsewhere.
And the sad thing is that so much of Africa's wealth is in its young people, especially when many Western countries are seeing aging populations, declining birth rates. So with many young people wanting to leave and leaving, how does that affect countries in Africa as well as its future growth?
Yes, I mean, that's very true. And essentially, people don't want coups, military coups either, because then they can't quite trust the military to govern properly. So what we're looking at really is a sort of a mass civil strife from the youth, perhaps supported by a cultural revolution by the middle class. If the middle class can actually decide that from contract bidding to project management to procurement, they are going to make sure that no politician gets away with anything that's untoward, then you can be at least sure that the corruption is being checked. So we're talking about a cultural revolution that will really deal with or address the culture of corruption that's going on. It's actually become a culture. Everywhere, every inch you take, you have to bribe someone to go forward in all aspects of life. And the masses don't have the money to be paying their way through each stages of their lives. And the middle class are afraid to confront politicians because the judicial prosecution don't want to prosecute politicians.
And it does seem that corruption becomes a way of life. It's just something that's ingrained in the culture. And I speak as a South African, where we have seen a lot of this, where there has been, as you say, judicial reform and people trying to take the situation and former leaders to court, but nothing really seems to happen. But I also want to look at those countries in Africa that have low corruption rates, like Botswana and the Seychelles. What is it about those two countries in particular that makes them have some of the lowest corruption rates on the continent?
It's because the leaders, the heads of state, particularly in Botswana, consistently, the heads of state have demonstrated good example of not being corrupt, of living within their means, of actually setting the example so that the other ministers follow. In all the other opposite cases where corruption is so high, the elites, the political elites from presidential level to ministers do not set a good example, and they flout the whole country with impunity. And as I said, the institutions are not strong enough to bring them to check. So the reason why Botswana and Seychelles are good examples is because their political elites, their leadership, have committed to setting example, the good example, over the decades. And perhaps that's what the other countries need to follow. But as it happens right now, and they are not prepared to follow, the culture of corruption has become persistent, and you will need a cultural revolution to basically address it. And this is somehow the issue that everyone is thinking about. What really should we do to address this thing? And what happened in Kenya with all the protests, you will need a middle class level to actually also cooperate to actually bring this to pass. So it should be a combination of the masses and a middle class cultural revolution, including, of course, the judicial service to bring, and of course, you need the security forces to also be in support. Usually, when the elites are afraid that the security forces might take action, then they comply. But it's all very, difficult to gauge at this stage, and that's where we are at the moment.
Michael Amoah, thanks so much for breaking that all down for us live there from London.